Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to be continuing work on the 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic and specifically continuing with the Versa-matic repairs that we started in a previous video. Since the last video, we've put on all of the pulley parts just to get them out of the way. They aren't fixed on properly. As you can see, this lever isn't actually attached. They're just on there to get them out of our way for today while we make some more repairs to this Versa-matic system. Now, something we did before we started recording today was we actually straightened up this bracket. This wasn't actually at 90 degrees to this face before. Which it probably came out of the factory like that, but now it is at a right angle to that face, and we need it like that because we are going to be drilling out that hole because it's ovaled and worn. So to remove that wear, we're going to be drilling it out to 5/8 diameter in there and inserting one of these bushings in there. We'll then have to cut this down a bit, but then that should take out all of the wear of that hole, and then this part can go in there. The most difficult bit of doing this will probably be lining it up in the mill and seeing if our drill bits will actually reach. Now, what I mean by that is there's obviously a large amount of material either side of this, and if you imagine the Morse taper adapter chuck that we've got for our mill kind of going over there, being able to reach through that might be a bit difficult because we obviously don't want the chuck to rub against this. So we think we might be okay with the drill that we've selected, but worst case scenario, we do have a Morse taper extender here, so we can use that if need be. And before we started recording today, we did a couple of test holes to find our 5/8 drill bit, which we're very happy with, seeing as that is a good interference fit in there. Then another delightful job that we've got to do is to weld up and grind down this wear on the kind of lever part here, which we need to weld that up so that there's all new material in that big groove, and then gonna have to grind it down to match the profile of the rest of the shaft, all while trying not to weld up that hole, which not sure how we're going to do that yet, but that isn't the problem of the first job. The first job will be getting this mounted into the mill. We've now got the bracket assembly in the mill vise here. We've put one of these thick plates either side because this part of the bracket is pretty small and we wanted to give it some rigidity. If there's too many vibrations anyway, we can just kind of hold this part of the bracket to kind of absorb some this way so that it doesn't move about as much at the drill bit part. Now, we did have concerns about the adapter hitting the bracket, but it does look like when we lift the table up, this should just clear, so that's good. And when it comes to lining it up, we've tried to center the drill as best we can, but obviously with an ovaled hole it's quite difficult, but as I said, we've done the best we can there, so let's see how this goes. We did just stop and lower the table a minute to try and see if the hole was looking like it was cutting centrally, and it is. And also we wanted to add this support here because, as we said before, this plate here is very thin and we didn't want that flexing under the pressure and therefore bending the angle that that bracket is held at, making the hole not straight. So I don't think it needed it necessarily, but we've now got the support there, So we are happy to continue all the way through. So here goes. There we are, we've got all the way through. And that is the new hole drilled. We're happy with the hole that we drilled, and we've now got this hole set up in the press. It is a bit complicated, and once again the height was kind of an issue. However, we think we should be alright on that front. We've got this bit of pipe supporting this bracket, and then a couple of blocks supporting the back face, or plate, however you want to say it. We've got a bolt through the bushing instead of a press tool that we usually make up, but that bolt kind of fitted quite well, so we're happy with how that all is. So I'm now going to try and press this in, and we did start it off on camera to make sure that it would all work. Right, there we are. Put this on. We now have the bushing fully in there. We cut it down and then deburred it. So that is all complete with the bushing. And we've cleaned up the end of the shaft on here so that we can test fit it. So if we get that through there we go. And kind of line this up with where it would be. Move this about, try and hold the bracket. There isn't actually any upwards or up and down, side to side play in that at the moment, so that's good. And that is despite having that groove on there. The reason for that being the flange bushing has a bigger kind of area that it covers. So it's engaging with the bits either side of the groove that aren't worn. However, we are still going to do our kind of metal replacement work on this part. So what we now need to do is get the welder out, put some weld on that and grind it down. That's going to be a very long job, so I'm not sure how much we'll video, but we will get on with that and see you in about probably like 10 hours time. Welcome back. It's been a little while, but not as long as we thought it would be. And we've got the end of this Versa-matic lever to where we want it. Now you may notice it looks a bit discoloured, and that's because as we went around welding it and then taking it down with a file, when we got relatively close, we used some Sharpie, put that over the area, and then kind of tried to put it into the bushing to find the high spot, and that was exposed by the Sharpie, and then we could take those down using the file. And we've now got to a point where we are pretty happy with the tight fit that we've got there. Now, originally, or when we took this apart, this had this big washer on the end of this, but really that is too big. So we've got a new one here, which we'll put on instead. It's a much more appropriate size, and unfortunately we don't actually have a replacement pin, so we've kind of salvaged this one to use on there again. So there we are, put that through. Now I can kind of line up the bracket here, And when it comes to the bolts, we've cleaned these up, got new spring washers and cleaned up the nuts too. So bolts have to go in kind of upside down from this angle, but obviously that'll fix the other way up, so that will result in the bolt heads being on the top. I'll just quickly put the other one through as well. There we are. Almost lost the hole there. And what we'll do off camera is just tighten all of these bits up. Everything is fitted up now, and we've oiled these kind of pivot points here, just so that that wears a bit slower and there's less friction. Another thing we did was we have just made a couple of small adjustments to this bracket and the lever part, because they were both slightly bent towards each other, which, as you can see by this face, meant that they were kind of scraping against each other, but now that moves nice and smoothly, so that's all good. And we have just polished up the knob too on there, so that's nice and shiny, so that is all working well. But now the last part to go on this is kind of the button part, and how this works is there's a spring in the bottom, then this rod goes on top of it, and then there's a roll pin that goes through it, and the roll pin is the part that engages in each of these notches. So we've got a new roll pin, we're reusing the spring, and obviously we're keeping the original button part. If you remember correctly, the old roll pin has a hole through it because of how worn it gets doing this job, but we've oiled everything so that it won't rust or anything like that in future. So we'll drop the spring in first. There we are, you can kind of see it down there. Next thing to go in is this rod, which we're putting in with the less worn side on the inside, which doesn't make a huge difference, but at the same time everything helps to reduce any bits of wear. As you can see there, that's the button bit, and we're going to have to push this down while we put the pin in to actually get that in. So that is looking like a two-person job, so me and Dad will quickly do this off camera so that we can get it all done easily, seeing as one of us is going to have to be holding that down, the other one steadying and hitting the roll pin in. We'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully with this all properly assembled. We've got the whole button system rebuilt now, and that works nicely, so we're happy with that. And we've put some rust prevention oil on the bottom here that we've talked about before, which is something we're doing over the entire tractor, and it brings up the paintwork nicely, which is what we want for this kind of mechanical restoration. But anyway, now it's time to mount this on the tractor, and we've removed the pulleys that we put on here temporarily so that we can actually get to this easier. Now it mounts in 3 points, 2 bolts on the dash tower, 1 down here on this kind of Versa-matic mounting part. So I'm just trying to line up the bolts at the moment. And we've got new washers and spring washers for each of these bolts. We're trying to reuse the original bolts because they've got some nice patina on them. However, it's quite difficult to line up some of these threads. That's just not liking where it's going. Is that in? Hard to tell if something's going in or not. Nope, definitely doesn't like it. And that bolt's come out, so that's probably why it doesn't like it. There we are, that's in now. It's quite a tight fit. But another thing that has to go on at a similar time is this brace part, which goes from there to there as well, which kind of reinforces it, which we noticed kind of sprung up once we took it off before, so that's going to take a bit of work to actually get that lined up properly. But what we'll do is we'll cut now, do up all of these fixings properly, and come back to you in just a second, hopefully with everything done up. We have this panel and the Versa-matic lever all bolted up now. And something we did just check as we were doing this was we got a square here, and we wanted to make sure that this bracket was actually mounted on there straight or at 90 degrees to the dash tower, which it actually wasn't at first, but it is now, so we're happy with all of that. And what we're going to move on to next is switching over these lever parts. It's just from going to unbolt this and then take this part, because we want one of the original knobs on this tractor. This is the Versa-matic from this tractor. That's the bit from our parts tractor, so we're just going to switch the two lever parts across, clean this up a bit, and then it will match this tractor perfectly. And then we have the lovely challenge of trying to fit all of this up and holding the different bits where we think they should be. This was much easier to take off because everything was just seized in position, but now everything moves, so we've got the fun of that. Now, effectively, this part should connect to this tab here using a clevis pin. We've ordered a clevis pin, but it's not here yet. So for the moment, we're going to fit it up with this bolt and then switch it when the pin arrives. This bar part goes into here, as you saw earlier when we had it on there just temporarily. Then the lever pivot point there attaches to the brake pedal on there, so that's where that turns on. And then there is actually a hook part here for a spring, and that spring goes to another mount on the engine when that's fitted. So obviously this won't be fully connected up, but we're hoping that between both of us we can get this roughly in the right place. So there won't be any video of this because it's going to be quite fiddly, I think, but we'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully with all of this connected up. After not that long, surprisingly, everything is attached. I'll just give you a quick demonstration of the moving parts. This is the PTO belt tensioner for when we eventually in the future fit a powered implement to this. That's how you tension it. That's nice and smooth. Same with the Versa-matic lever here. As we go through each of the points, works very well. So we're happy with this, and that is kind of this module of the tractor done. So we need to do some thinking about what we're going to attack next. Now we could kind of ignore the engine for a bit and fit up some other panels and stuff, but it's probably best that we start to have a look at the engine soon, see what that needs, and if we need to order any parts for it. However, that is another day's issue. That is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.